The Soviet mechanic was tightening a cylinder head bolt on the Klimov engine. Airfield outside Moscow. June 1944. Morning sun. His hands worked methodically. The wrench slipped. The bolt stripped. He cursed. Then the sky split open with a scream. A fighter dove straight down over the hangar. 500 miles per hour. 20 feet off the deck. The blast wave knocked tools off benches. Windows rattled. The mechanic hit the dirt. The plane pulled up vertical and climbed like a rocket. To the Soviet brass watching from the tower, this was reckless flying. They called it dangerous. They said the pilot would kill himself. 3 months later, Luftwaffe High Command issued an order to all fighter squadrons. Avoid combat below 5,000 meters with any yak lacking an oil cooler under the nose. The Germans had learned to fear the smallest fighter of the war. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and hit subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. The problem was altitude. German FW-190s and Bf-109GS owned the sky above 20,000 feet. Their superchargers kept pulling power where Soviet engines wheezed and stalled. Soviet ground attack planes needed cover below 15,000 feet. Right over the battlefield. Right where German fighters could slaughter them. The Yak-1 tried. The Yak-9 tried harder. Both were good aircraft. Neither could match a Focke-Wulf in a sustained turn below 10,000 feet. Soviet Il-2 Sturmovix kept getting massacred because their fighter escort couldn't keep German interceptors off them. Pilots reported the same thing in every debrief. We need something faster. We need something that turns tighter. We need something that climbs faster. Most importantly, we need it to work down low where the real fighting happens. Alexander Yakovlev figured it out in 1943. The Yak-1 wasn't bad. It was just heavy. Strip 500 pounds. Smaller wings. Cleaner airframe. Move the oil cooler from the chin to the wing roots. Same engine as the Yak-9 but in a fighter that weighed less than a Spitfire. The Yak-3 wasn't revolutionary. It was surgical. Every ounce mattered. The fighter weighed 4,641 pounds empty. Loaded for combat, 5,864 pounds. A Bf-109G weighed 6,940 pounds loaded. The FW-190A weighed 8,770 pounds. The Yak-3 was a lightweight facing heavyweights. But it had a Klimov VK-105PF-2 putting out 1,300 horsepower. Power-to-weight ratio, 0.36 kilowatts per kilogram. That number meant the Yak-3 could outclimb and outturn anything the Luftwaffe threw at it below 13,000 feet. The Germans called it the kite. Soviet pilots called it the scalpel. It was both. First combat deployment, July 1944. 91st IAP. 2nd Air Army. Lieutenant Colonel Kovalev commanding. The regiment flew 431 sorties in the first month. 20 Luftwaffe fighters claimed destroyed. 3 Ju-87 Stukas. 2 Yak-3s lost. The numbers looked good on paper. The real test came on June 16, 1944. 18 Yak-3s scrambled to intercept a raid. They found 24 German aircraft over Belarusian farmland. Bf-109s. FW-190s. Mixed formation at 8,000 feet. The Germans saw the Yaks coming and assumed easy kills. Small fighters. Probably Yak-1s. They'd fought those before. The Yaks dove into the formation and everything the Germans thought they knew stopped working. June 16, 1944. 1,430 hours. 8,000 feet over Vitebsk sector. The sky was clear. Visibility unlimited. Ground haze blurred the horizon but the air above was crystal. 18 Yak-3s in loose finger four formations climbed through 7,000 feet. Below them, farmland stretched green and brown. Ahead, black dots. German fighters circling a ground target. The Yaks closed at 350 miles per hour. The German formation leader spotted them at 3 miles. He radioed his wingmen. Yaks inbound. Standard intercept. Break and engage. The Germans turned to meet them. Confident. They'd done this 100 times. The lead Yak pilot didn't hesitate. He shoved the throttle forward and dove. The Klimov engine roared. Airspeed climbed. 380, 400, 420 miles per hour. The other Yaks followed. A waterfall of Soviet fighters pouring down. The German leader expected the Yaks to level off and dogfight. Instead, they kept diving, right through his formation, splitting it. He yanked his FW-190 into a hard left turn to follow. Maximum G. The 190 could turn. It was no slouch, but it weighed 3 tons loaded. The Yak-3 weighed less than 2. The difference showed immediately. The Yak rolled inverted and pulled. The 190 pilot watched his target disappear beneath him. He tried to follow. His vision grayed. G-forces crushing his body. The Yak was already reversing, coming back around. How was that possible? He'd never seen a Soviet fighter move like this. The Yak pilot lined up his gun sight. Range, 600 meters. The 190 filled his canopy. Growing larger. He squeezed the trigger. The SHK cannon fired through the propeller hub. 20mm shells. The 2 UBS machine guns joined in. 12.7mm rounds. The combined weight of fire, 2.72 kilograms per second. The stream of lead reached out and touched the Focke-Wulf's left wing root. Metal shredded. Fuel tank ruptured. Fire bloomed orange and black. The 190 rolled right and fell, trailing smoke like a comet. The Yak pilot didn't watch. He was already turning for another target. Scanning. Always scanning. A Bf-109 dove on his wingman from above. Classic energy attack. The German had altitude advantage. He expected to make one pass and escape. The Yak-3 saw him coming and pulled vertical. Straight up. The 109 pilot's jaw dropped. Soviet fighters didn't do that. They couldn't climb that fast. But this one was. The Yak climbed at 3,645 feet per minute at combat weight. The 109 tried to follow and bled energy. The Yak kept climbing. Nose pointed at the sun. Engine howling. At 12,000 feet the Yak leveled off. Flipped inverted. Dove back down. The 109 pilot never saw the shot that killed him. Cannon shells walked up his fuselage from tail to cockpit. The Messerschmitt broke apart. Wings folding. Fuselage tumbling. The German formation was disintegrating. They'd expected to fight Yak-9s. Maybe Yak-1s. Capable fighters but beatable if you had altitude and experience. These Yak-3s fought differently. They turned inside everything. They climbed like interceptors. They rolled faster than a 190 could follow. German pilots started breaking off, running for altitude, trying to get above 15,000 feet where their superchargers gave them an edge. The Yaks let them go. Their job wasn't chasing Germans into the stratosphere. Their job was owning the sky below 13,000 feet. That's exactly what they did. The fight lasted 11 minutes. 15 German aircraft claimed destroyed. 1 Yak-3 damaged. 1 destroyed. The next day, Luftwaffe activity over that sector virtually ceased. Pilots reported the new Soviet fighter to intelligence. No chin intake. Incredibly agile. Turns like nothing we faced. Avoid engagement below 5,000 meters. A month later, on July 17th, 8 Yak-3s jumped a formation of 60 German aircraft. 60. The Germans had bombers. They had escorts. They had numbers. The 8 Yaks attacked anyway. 3 Ju-87s shot down. 4 Bf-109GS destroyed. No Yak losses. Luftwaffe High Command issued a formal order that week. Avoid combat below 5,000 meters with Yakovlev fighters lacking an oil cooler intake beneath the nose. The Germans were running from Soviet fighters. The impact rippled across the entire Eastern Front. Soviet Il-2 Sturmovik ground attack aircraft suddenly had reliable fighter cover. The Yak-3s could keep Luftwaffe interceptors away while the Sturmovix tore apart German armor and infantry. Soviet pilots requested Yak-3s specifically. Ground crews loved them. Simple maintenance. Robust construction. The pneumatic system for landing gear and flaps was less reliable than hydraulics, but it saved weight. Everything was about weight. The French noticed. The Normandy-Niemen Regiment had been flying Yak-9s on the Eastern Front since 1943. Good fighters. They'd scored 174 victories with them. In August 1944, they switched to Yak-3s. The last 99 of their 273 total victories came in Yak-3s. French ace Marcel Albert flew the Yak-3 and later said it was superior to both the Spitfire and P-51 Mustang. He'd flown all three. He knew. He scored 8 of his 23 victories in the Yak-3. The regiment flew 5,240 sorties. Participated in 869 dogfights. Lost 52 pilots. Stalin was so impressed he gave them their Yak-3s as gifts after the war. 40 aircraft. The French pilots flew them home to Paris in June 1945. Production ran from March 1944 to August 1946. A total of 4,848 Yak-3s rolled off Soviet assembly lines. Combat losses, 210 total. 60 in 1944. 150 in 1945. The aircraft had problems. Plywood skin delaminate during high-speed dives. Short-range limited operations. Engine reliability was inconsistent. None of that mattered below 13,000 feet. Down low, the Yak-3 was king. German pilots learned to respect it. Soviet pilots learned to trust it. It did exactly what Yakovlev designed it to do. Own the low-altitude battlefield. The war ended in May 1945. The Yak-3 remained in Soviet service until 1952. Poland and Yugoslavia flew them for years after. The aircraft proved that bigger wasn't better. Heavier didn't mean stronger. Sometimes the answer was cutting weight and accepting limitations. The Yak-3 couldn't fight at 25,000 feet. It didn't need to. Every battle has a vertical axis. The Yak-3 chose its altitude and dominated there absolutely. One lightweight fighter built from common sense and brilliant engineering rewrote the rules of low-altitude combat and terrified the Luftwaffe into retreat. The Yak-3 proved that knowing your mission and executing it perfectly beats trying to do everything adequately. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It fights the algorithm and keeps these histories alive. Subscribe so you don't miss more forgotten stories from World War II. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which story you want to hear next.